Hello and welcome to the KOFISI Connect podcast, your source for a wealth of roundtable discussions on the workplace and business, as well as cultural news and trends from the diverse and dynamic continent of Africa. I'm your host, Georgia Webber, and today I'm very pleased to introduce Elaine Mungai and Carolyne Tunnen from the Mawazo Institute. This is our first ever member spotlight, so welcome. First of all, Elaine, tell me a little bit about what the Mawazo Institute does.
Thanks, Georgia. And so the Mawazo Institute is a pioneering, women-led Pan-African organization that supports early career African women researchers as they, work to discover impactful solutions to local, regional, and global development challenges. And so our goal as an organization is to envision a world where the voices and the big ideas of African women impact the future of the continent and the world. And so we do this by nurturing the professional development and the thought leadership of these early career African women researchers who are pursuing their PhDs on the continent. And we highlight the fact that African women who are pursuing their PhDs and conducting research are generating evidence that's impactful and that has really practical solutions to Africa's development challenges. And so we invest in women. So we invest in working with women because we believe that African women, and particularly African women who are pursuing their PhDs, are special. We believe that they're driven, they're creative, they're analytical, they're critical thinkers who bring this really unique perspectives to research and development challenges, and are innovative and can contribute with really holistic and sustainable ideas for the development of the continent. And so ideally, as an organization, we really play this role in supporting African women researchers by giving them these necessary tools and opportunities as well to make significant contributions to research policy and public engagement on the continent.
Amazing. So I suppose that kind of answers my second question, because I was going to sort of ask you about the sectors of society you've chosen to focus on and why, because it's very specific. Is there a reason behind that?
Yes, and allow me just to give a context why we picked women, because I think Elaine has spoken very well about the sector that we are supporting. And when you look at statistics, UNESCO report of 2013, it placed women at 28% of women researchers globally. Come 2018, we had the number increasing at 33%, but the number is still not good. And we realized that in Africa, you find that the global north has really, really dictated what Africa needs to do in terms of its research. Mm-hmm. So we realized that women are playing a very critical aspect in terms of creating homegrown solutions to our continental problems. So why we place more emphasis in terms of the women, it's because of the gap that exists within the research ecosystem. And for us, we are coming in to bridge this gender gap, which we believe that women are very innovative, as Elaine has just mentioned about the uniqueness that women bring on the table. And we believe that the African woman is actually there to be able to provide these solutions to their continental problems.
I'm quite interested to actually ask you about the differences, I suppose, with the role that women are playing, yes, or the way that the women see the world differently or their communities differently, which you've obviously identified as deserved of further further support.
Okay, so women are basically primary caregivers, and I think one of the things that we need to realize is the fact that they don't have the same level ground with their male counterparts. So you find that women have to take care of their families. Women have to, of course, all know they have to take care of their husbands, and of course the society in general. So you can't basically be able to give them the same level ground with the men. And I think what Mawazo is coming to do here is to come and support them so that they can be able to finalize or even to complete their PhD studies.
Women themselves bring their own set of experiences, as you were talking about there, but then also those experiences provide solutions for communities with a very different agenda to what men, especially men from the global north, will kind of push on the research world. Yeah,
so I think what Tunnen was saying, that that aspect of being caregivers, being, a woman, like, for example, the profile of a woman PhD researcher within our network is, probably married, definitely has children. You're probably taking care of your family in the village. You have students as well you're mentoring, students you're teaching as well. And so already within the work that they do, they're already like very community driven. And so, they naturally create avenues for, the technical word would be like gendered perspectives, which technically or generally male colleagues and male scientists, for example, would not bring in those gendered perspectives. But even without the technicalities of understanding those gender perspectives, by the virtue of their experiences, they bring them into their research.
Sure.
And so, you may be in the lab, but then you'll also be considering, participatory action, research approaches to how you can incorporate members of the community into your work. And so, for example, we have one of our alumni who's works at the International Primate Institute. What is IP? I think International Primate. No. Primate. The Primate Institute in Karen. And anyway, she studies zoonotic viruses, and so her work is very lab specific. So she's trying to see after COVID and Ebola, etc. How can we be able to catch these viruses before? How can we understand the transmission mechanisms between human beings and these animals, and control for that, and reduce the impact of these diseases, or be able to catch them before, come up with new solutions to treating them. And so she would have been able to just keep her solutions within the lab. But because she understands that this impacts, the women, women are the ones who will be interacting with these animals, where it's regards to animal husbandry or looking for food and things like that. They're the people who are interacting with them, and so it's important to sensitize them on what's the word? How harmful it is, interacting with these animals, and why perhaps you should not be considering bats as as a protein source and things like that. Sure. And so because of that, she ran like sensitization workshops. Her work was based in Turkana, and she ran sensitization workshops for the communities there to be able to teach them about her work, not only the scientific aspects of it, but also the impact that it has for them as members of the community. So I think women bring in that aspect of, because I'm a member of society, I'm a member of these communities, I take care of so many people, I'm already thinking one step ahead about how far my work could go outside of the lab. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So you've got a fellowship program. Who is going to tell me a little bit about?
In fact, it's Elaine, but allow me just to make a follow-up on what she said, which I think now I'm trying to bring my brain back to this. And allow me just to use that analogy, which I think is very, very important for the listeners to hear, that I want to give an analogy of a marathoner and a woman who is pursuing her PhD studies. And this woman, by the time they're getting into this, first they're actually very eager, they're very excited about this PhD journey. I am going to contribute towards this knowledge. I am actually going to be an expert in this particular field. I'm actually going to contribute towards solutions to the continent problems. And just the same thing as a marathoner, they're actually looking forward to completing this marathon. And at the starting point, of course, that is the eagerness, where they have the eagerness, they have the excitement, they're so enthusiastic about this journey. But of course, they don't know what journey is ahead of them. So I think what we can say here is that that is actually the space where we believe that women believe in themselves, that I'm beginning this journey and I'm going to finish it. So the second thing about it is now the training phase. And the training phase, this is now where we have the preparation and the hard work, where these women have to go to laboratories, they have to go and do the experiments, they have to go to the real research, they have to go to the field and collect data about the particular field that they're actually contributing towards. And at the end of the day, this is actually where you find that these women are very determined, they're very disciplined, and there's a lot of sacrifice that goes with them. Don't forgetting that the fact that they actually are primary caregivers, so they have actually to balance between life and, of course, their career studies. And then mid-race, when you look at the marathoners, you find that they have to endure, and of course they have to be very persistent, because at the end of the day, you find that sometimes these women, they go through imposter syndrome. Sometimes you find that the experiences are actually failing. Sometimes you find that, again, that they're writers, they have the writing blocks. So you find that this actually are challenges, the real challenges that a marathoner goes through before they get to the end of the race. So here we allow them to stay focused, very resilient, to be very resilient, to be persistent, and at the end of the day, amid all this diversity that a marathoner goes through, this is actually where we allow our women to be able to stand firm and be able to get through the marathon. And then the support system now that they require at this particular point is the encouragement and motivation. Just as like a marathoner, you need to encourage them and tell them, you know what, you're actually going through this race, you have to finish this race. The same thing with women. We allow them, we encourage them, we pair them with mentors, make sure that there are peers that are there to give them the motivation and encouragement to push over and make sure that at the end of the day, they can be able to complete their PhD studies. And this is actually now where we uplift their spirits and we help them to overcome these hurdles that they go through on a single day. And then the final stretch, this is actually now where they're pushing towards the finishing line, just as a marathoner, and they push themselves now in the final stages. This is actually where you find that they have now to defend their theses. They have actually to focus on giving the right outputs for their and outcomes for their research. And this is actually where now we ask them to be resilient, to be persevere in this particular journey. Just like a marathon, at the end of the day, they have to persevere the fatigue, they have to persevere the climate patterns, weather patterns that are actually changing. And then finally is actually the crossing line, where now we see now the accomplishment, where we have the accomplishment and the successes of these women, where now these women actually signifying accomplishment. I think one of the things that I need to speak more about here is the support system now that we give to these women. And I think this is an area where Mawazo is very good at. We provide mentorship, we provide partnerships and networking opportunities. We provide them with the right tools and career paths opportunities. And for Mawazo, what we do here is to ensure that they keep track and ensure that they finish the marathon. We make sure that at the end of the day, they are able to finish their PhD studies. The reason why women cut short their careers is because of the work-life balances that they have to endeavor. And I think one of the things that Mawazo is telling them, please do not stop, please keep pushing. And that is why we provide them with these extra skill sets, so that they can be able to overcome the hurdles that they face on a daily basis. I think I needed to mention that.
So is this all part of the fellowship programs
No,
that you provide?
No. Elaine is going to speak about
the fellowship program is. Tell me a little bit about what the Mawazo fellowship program provides.
Yeah, so I think Tunnen has captured like the impact of the fellowship program. But the fellowship program is our flagship program. It's a 15-month fellowship that's designed for African women who are pursuing their PhD studies on the continent at accredited universities, pursuing development-focused work. We run a multidisciplinary program, and so we're not thematic specific. We don't look for climate change. We don't look for agriculture and food security. No. We just need you to be an African woman, so you have to prove that you're a citizen of a country on the African continent, registered at an African university, have passed your proposal defense, and so that means that in technical terms you're a PhD candidate, not a PhD student, and just doing development-focused work. And I think that's a basic criteria of what we look for in the fellowship. And then the fellowship, as Tunnen has talked about, has these components. It has the training and professional development arm, where we provide training on competencies that a researcher needs to have to be able to succeed in their research careers, but are not necessarily taught at the university. So, nice things like Tunnen is one of our policy experts in the organization, so things like policy engagement for researchers. Then, we program and design our programs in a way to meet the ecosystem needs. So what Tunnen talked about, things such as like mentorship, that's a programmatic aspect because a lack of mentorship is one of the things that with the women we work with and talk to see that they lack. And as well as when you consider the ecosystem that we engage with in research and academia in Africa, it's extremely unsupported. Lecturers are supporting, in the north and in the global north, maybe a lecturer will have maybe like 3 students that they're supervising. In an African lecturer is probably doing like close to 15. And so we create we program to be able to meet some of these needs. Then we also have like the research grants component as well, because the lack of funding is probably the biggest challenge that's faced by African women who are pursuing their PhD studies on the continent. And so we have those aspects, and what also Tunnen talked about, which is our mission is to build this capacity of the women, but then also because they're doing good work, we need to ensure that the work that they're doing, gets into the hands of policymakers, gets into the hands of governments, decision makers, but also the people who will be taking up the research, which is the local monanchi. So, somebody needs to understand the impacts of Paris's work with the zoonotic viruses. That's why she went to Turkana. And so it's not just research existing in our labs, as Tunnen said, and silos. We really encourage, do good work, and then ensure that this good work has impact. Yes.
Very valuable commodity. So what do you have any data for what the kind of drop-off rate was before, or what the drop-off rate is for researchers? Because obviously with the challenges with balancing kind of work-life balance as well as kind of children, and then with your impact, what's been the change? Have you seen that have you got any data for that?
It's a loaded question. I might have to come back with the data for it. But I think one, kind of like just piggybacking on the stats that Tunnen gave, African women are less than a third of researchers on the continent. As an ecosystem entirely, I think Africa produces less than 1.1% of the global output of research. So, and then, when you think about it from a researcher to citizen's perspective, I think the global numbers, I think globally are like about 1,300 plus per 1 million. For Africa, it's like 97 for every 1 million inhabitants. And so I think we're working in an ecosystem that's, as I said, has very little capacity, is under-resourced, and so maybe within internally as an organization we can give our statistics of where the women were before they joined our program and where they are after. So with regards to the training that they received from the program, with regards to the funding, the research funding that they've received, the mentorship, those networking opportunities, we can be able to show those statistics of impact. But with regards to like an ecosystem impact, it might be a bit more difficult because our cohorts are smaller. And so I'm not too sure. Yeah, I don't think I can give you the numbers.
Okay, no, don't worry. That was just something that popped into my head.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're a Pan-African, you're supporting, women across Africa. Obviously, are there any cultural challenges that you've encountered? I mean, it's a hugely diverse continent.
That's my question. So one of the things that we face as an organization is gender norms. And I think traditionally you find that gender norms is actually a problem that has really hindered gender representation, especially in access to education and research opportunities. And we find that societies being patriarchal society, especially in the region, it becomes very difficult for us to be able to convince the communities that there's need for us to be able to educate the girl. There's one scholar who lived between 1875 and 1927, Dr. James Agri, who in his speeches he kept saying that educate a man and actually you educate an individual, but when you educate a woman, you actually educate a society. So I think one of the things that we as Africans we are really struggling with the need for us to be able to bridge this gender gap. But at the same time, we have these societal expectations where you find that at the end of the day, if I feel that these women, for women, you are not supposed to be a leader, for example, you're not supposed to have access to education. These are actually society expectations that really exist within our society. And one critical aspect is actually the lack of resources for women. Find that women do not have enough resources or adequate resources for them to be able to access education and even research opportunities. For example, even for researchers or especially women, you find that they don't have access to funding for mentorship, for example, funding for attending conferences, for example. They have to go to laboratories. They don't have this funding. So we find that this is actually a very, very, very aspect that we are struggling with as a society. The lack of representation. I think in the society we find that women are actually lagging behind in terms of the leadership representation, and at the same time, of course, we see the same thing with our African researchers. And I think I've mentioned about the percentages that we are getting in terms of the global statistics for women in research in the world. So one of the things that we are doing to address some of these things, we're actually trying to really, really work towards policy change in terms of engaging policymakers to be able to bridge this gender gap. But at the same time, we are also trying to provide training programs, mentorship opportunities, and support to networks for women researchers so that we can help them to bridge this gap that has been created by cultural barriers. And through, of course, our media engagement and our brand assets like the Mawazo Ideas Nights, I think we're going to speak more about that. The Mawazo Collab events, we're also engaging with a wide range of communities, including policy and decision makers, to raise awareness about the importance of women in the research ecosystem, just to help shift cultural attitudes and towards gender equality. We're also collaborating with organizations, both locally and internationally, that share similar goals to amplify efforts to overcome cultural challenges and promote women's leadership. And then finally, we're also advocating for policy changes, which I've just mentioned, that promote gender equality in education and research to be able to create a more supportive environment for women who are pursuing academic careers.
Wow. So do your success stories then feed back into and act as mentors for your new researchers coming into the program? Is it a kind of cyclical sort of process?
Yeah, so that's actually embedded in in the program design. And so the mentorship aspect, so there's a professional mentorship, which they're paired with senior scientists and senior researchers who are doing similar work to them. And then there's a peer mentorship aspect. So presently our network has 92 women across 16 countries on the continent. And because of this multidisciplinary nature of our cohorts, it's very rich. And so the previous cohorts, the alumni play like a big sister role. Mm-hmm. And so we have like peer groups and peer facilitators who volunteer, to come in and lead this smaller groups of current fellows and come in and provide this like sort of big sister aspect of that emotional support that's needed for pursuing their PhD studies. As Tunnen has said, it's this grueling experience, and you're juggling all sorts of things, and so they come in and they give you that extra support. It's a nice place that somebody else can listen to you who's not your supervisor or Mawazo staff member who's out for this a program deliverable. So that's definitely embedded in our program.
Great. Yeah. So, and tell me some of your successes. Is there a standout sort of success story that either one of you has?
Each of us could speak of one. Yeah. But I would say, first of all, I think all of them are success stories. I think just the journey of a PhD, especially on the African continent, is a difficult one. And being a woman is even more difficult. We have these really nice monthly meetings for both our alumni and our fellows called convenings. And one of our alumni talked about how her husband is made fun of because she went on to do a sandwich program. So she's presently based in a school in Japan, and her husband is back here in Nairobi taking care of the children. And so they make fun of him because he's like a house husband, but he said he's a proud house husband. When you think about
Good for him.
there are a lot of women who can't do that.
Yeah.
That research mobility is a very significant gender barrier for women who are pursuing their research careers. And so it's just knowing that these are some of the things that the women experience, and as part of the journey of pursuing their PhDs on the continent. And so I think, we've presently had 3 cohorts. We'll be moving on to our next cohort. We'll be having a call for applications for the 4th cohort coming out in Q4 this year. But I think the best stories came from our first cohort. I think they were a much smaller group. We were 10 women doing really amazing research. They were our pilot, and they've gone on to do really great work. So I'll speak about Dr. Marilyn Rono. She's a mathematical epidemiologist from the University of Nairobi. She's presently teaching at the University of Embu. And her PhD research that we supported as an institution was geared towards, she was working on HIV/AIDS modeling. And she was looking at youth prevalence rates in Kenya. And I think if we see the news, we can see that HIV/AIDS is picking up again, and especially within a specific age bracket. And so she created a mathematical model that could be used to predict the outcomes and really just the statistics with regards to that. And, post-PhD, she, joined with other researchers. They created a consortium called the Innovate Health AI or Innovate AI Health, one of the two. And this is a group of computer scientists, mathematical epidemiologists, public health experts who've come together to develop an AI chatbot that, and part of the problem with HIV/AIDS is the stigma. And you don't want to just ask anybody questions around it because you don't want to be looked a certain way. And so this chatbot that's been designed for the youth, they've embedded Kenyan slang sharing into it so that people can be able to ask questions in languages that they can understand. The chatbot will respond in a language that they understand. And as part of this consortia, they've created this chatbot that, as part of the work we do, we've connected her to, public health, government officials. We are also working really hard to ensure that we can assist them in getting additional funding to be able to scale the chatbot. But it's that application. It's that this is the work I do as a scientist. I'm a mathematical epidemiologist. I'm working on HIV/AIDS. Oh, I understand this is an issue. What can we do with other researchers to be able to ensure that we are dealing with this public health pandemic or endemic right now? And that aspect comes out, out of that, being able to work with other researchers with the multidisciplinary cohort that we were in, and realizing, other people have different perspectives and have really good ideas, and this cross-pollination of ideas can come up with this really great thing. And so Marilyn is probably one of my favorite. Her work, I think, is super impactful, and I can't wait to see how far this AI chatbot would scale. It's called Beshte. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Marilyn might call me. She's like, no, you can't talk about the name of the chatbot. But it's called Beshte, and I think it will be, hitting the ground really soon. She, piloted it at one of our ideas nights. So as Tunnen mentioned, we have these public engagement platforms, and our ideas night is like a TED Talk, but in a bar, where we want to have serious conversations, but in a relaxed way. That's our way of science communication as an organization. And so she piloted it and showed us what it's going to look like, and we really can't wait to see what the end result will be. But that's the journey of one of our fellows.
Yes. Amazing.
Yeah. I think for me, I'll speak generally to the work that Mawazo has done, and not in particular a specific woman, because we have very good success stories. Elaine mentioned that we have 92 women in our network, and out of these 92 women, 14 have already graduated, and I think that's a huge achievement. And one of the things that we mentioned about the numbers globally about the women who have completed their PhD study, I think we are actually adding this number to the number that is existing, and I think for me this is a very good thing that is happening here. And thanks, of course, to the support that Mawazo has given them, making sure that we are pushing them forward, like making sure that we're giving them the right tools and professional development so that they can be able to complete their PhD studies. Another thing is the fact that we're actually connecting them to policymakers, and I think she mentioned one of it being someone we've just connected them to Ministry of Health, and I think we are also trying to see how we can be able to connect more and more of these women to policymakers so that they can contribute towards informing and influencing policies within the various fields that they're actually contributing towards. And then something else is the need that Mawazo is actually contributing towards knowledge creation. I think one of the two reports that we have been able to do is one of it being the Emerging Trends report, which I think it has been a very good report in terms of contributing towards the trends of research trends in Africa. And I think when you look at these trends, it's actually telling you where the money is going in terms of the research, but at the same time where the needs is being felt. And I think Mawazo being there and being providing this contribution, I think it's very, very important. And soon we're actually launching a report which is going to be very, very huge for the continent. It's actually the status of women in Africa, status of African women in research. I think this is actually going to be a very, very important report because it's actually going to show us the conditions and the challenges that women in research actually encounter. But at the same time, it's not just doing a research for the sake of doing it, but we want to see what action can we be able to call for the different stakeholders so that we can be able to increase the numbers of women in research. And I think one of the things that we really want to do with this research is to come up with strategic interventions that are really going to improve the conditions of women in research in Africa. And I think that's very, very important for Mawazo. And I think we continue to amplify their voices through strategic communications and, of course, public engagement and policy engagement platforms where we are able now to showcase the work that these women are doing. And I think these women are doing marvelous work. And we also launched the season 6 of our Nairobi, the podcast, Mawazo podcast, which I think it's something that we'd also call upon the listeners here to be able just to log into our social media channels and listen to the amazing, amazing stories of our women researchers and, of course, how they have managed to overcome some of the realities, the challenges that actually exist within our society. So I think those are the many, many things that Mawazo is doing, and we appreciate the fact that we're actually contributing in a smaller way, but we are contributing to the increase of the numbers for women in research on the continent.
Oh, amazing. Well, Elaine and Carolyne, thank you very much for coming in from the Mawazo Institute. Keep up the great work. I look forward to maybe one day hearing about one of your ladies getting a Nobel Prize, some sort of science.
Yeah, now that we only have 19 women out of the 92. Yeah, women laureates, actually 19. And I think that's a very good point, where we are also seeing, for example, the AU has come up with a very good award for women researchers. I think that's a very good way forward for us in terms of the commitments by the AU. And at the same time, we are seeing more women getting these awards, and we hope that these numbers can actually increase to 40 or even 50, so that we can at least bridge this gender gap in research.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Keep up the great work.